Ever hear a name sort of buzzing around? Maybe you see it in a headline, but you didn't really have the full picture.
Hmm.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that kind of name, Pinduoduo. It's this Chinese e-commerce platform that has just, well,
It
exploded.
really has. The growth is staggering.
Yeah, founded in 2015, went public on NASDAQ in just 3 years. And now, get this, it's actually the second largest e-commerce player in China by users
Hmm.
and monthly active users, too.
Ahead of JD.com, which is huge.
Exactly. Ahead of JD.com, only trailing the absolute giant, Alibaba. So your mission with us today, if you choose to accept it, is to really understand Pinduoduo. Like, what is it? What's different about its business model? And, why has it been so incredibly successful in such a tough market?
Right.
We're working from a really insightful newsletter that digs into the Chinese IT scene. So we'll unpack that. It's that feeling, where you know the name.
But not the story behind it.
Exactly. We're going to bring it all into focus.
And I think what's really striking right away, it's just the speed and scale of Pinduoduo's rise.
Mm-hmm.
To really appreciate it, we kind of need to set the stage, look at who the big players were in Chinese e-commerce.
Okay.
You had Alibaba, obviously, dominant. With Tmall and Taobao, their marketplaces, they were and still are the leader by a long shot.
Yeah, you think about their Singles' Day sales? It's mind-boggling numbers.
Absolutely, billions and billions in just one day. Their GMV, that's gross merchandise volume, back in 2019 was around 6 trillion yuan.
Mm.
Still growing strong, too, like 25% growth.
Wow. Okay, so Alibaba was this massive marketplace connecting buyers and sellers, but not really handling the physical goods themselves, mostly?
Right, more of a platform.
Yeah.
And then you had the number 2, JD.com.
JD.com, right. Jingdong.
Exactly. And they took a very different approach, much more like Amazon, building out their own warehouses, their own logistics network.
Which costs a lot, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, huge investment. And interestingly, they had major backing from Tencent. So you had this sort of proxy war between Alibaba and Tencent playing out in e-commerce, too.
Fascinating.
Now, JD's GMV in 2019 was smaller, maybe 1.7 trillion yuan, but their growth rate was actually higher than Alibaba's, around 31.7%. So they were definitely gaining ground.
So that's the backdrop, these two established giants.
All right, that was the battlefield Pinduoduo walked onto.
Okay, so picture that scene, two massive players. And then Pinduoduo launches September 2015, just like 3 years later, July 2018, boom, they're listed on NASDAQ.
Incredible speed.
And even before that IPO, mid-2018, they'd already overtaken JD.com in monthly active users.
Yeah.
By the end of 2018, more total users, too, like 380 million versus JD's 300 million.
The user growth was just phenomenal. Their GMV was catching up to 471 billion yuan in 2018. Still behind JD at that point, but the momentum.
But the really key thing, wasn't it, was that their model was different. Not just another marketplace or Amazon clone.
Precisely. That's the core of it. Pinduoduo uses what's generally called a co-buying or group buying model.
Mm.
Now, the basic idea of, buying together to get a discount isn't totally new.
Right. I remember hearing about things like that years ago. Didn't always work out.
Exactly. There were attempts in Japan and elsewhere, but they never really hit critical mass like this. Pinduoduo just adapted it incredibly well for China. You often hear it called social EC, or from a marketing angle, C2B, consumer to business.
C2B. Okay, that term usually makes me think of something else, like maybe I sell my old phone back to a company or people selling solar power back to the grid.
Yeah, that's the more traditional understanding. Consumers providing goods or services to businesses. Pinduoduo's use of C2B is a bit different, more nuanced.
Okay.
So let's just step back. Basic commerce, right? B2C, business to consumer. A company makes something, a rice cooker, whatever. Value is created. The consumer pays money for that value.
Standard stuff.
In Pinduoduo's C2B model, it's the consumers who are generating a really key type of value. And the businesses, the sellers on Pinduoduo, they're the ones benefiting directly from that value.
Okay, so the big question is, what is that value the consumers are creating?
We'll get right into that. But first, let's talk about why people flock to it.
Okay, yeah. What's the appeal? Our source jumps right into the prices. Unbelievably low prices.
Crazy low.
The example given is 50 rolls of toilet paper for 6.8 yuan. That's like $1, maybe a bit more.
Yeah, roughly 100 yen or so. It's astonishingly cheap.
It almost sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It makes you wonder about the catch.
Absolutely. And look, in the early days, those rock-bottom prices definitely raised eyebrows. There were legitimate concerns about counterfeit goods, really low-quality stuff.
Right.
And that definitely contributed to its initial image, especially in the big cities,
Yeah.
as being, maybe just for lower-income groups. People were almost embarrassed to admit they used it.
Hidden Pinduoduo users, the newsletter calls them.
Exactly. But what's fascinating is how that perception shifted. Now there's much more openness. People in Shanghai or Beijing aren't hiding it anymore. It's moved way beyond just cheap and bad.
Okay, so how does the co-buying actually work to get those prices? It can't just be random discounts. There's a system, right?
Oh, definitely a system. There are basically three ways you can buy something on Pinduoduo. First, you've got the single purchase. In Chinese, that's Danmai.
Okay.
So for that same 50-pack of toilet paper, maybe the single purchase price is 10.9 yuan. Still cheap, relatively speaking, but not that crazy 6.8 yuan price.
So you'd only do that if you needed it right now, just one item.
Pretty much. It's not the main way people use it. The second way, and this is way more common, is joining a group. Cantuan.
Right, joining an existing group.
Exactly. This lets you get that super low price, the 6.8 yuan for the toilet paper, by joining a group other people have already started for the same item.
How do you find a group?
The app makes it really easy. It shows you groups that only need like one or two more people to hit the target number for the discount. So usually you can find one pretty quick and jump in.
And the group usually succeeds.
Yeah, most of the time. I mean, technically a group could get canceled if people drop out, but
Right.
it doesn't seem to happen that often.
Okay, makes sense. Collective buying power. But the third way sounds like the real secret sauce. Starting a group. Kaituan.
It's absolutely the core of their model.
Yeah.
When you choose Kaituan, you kick off a limited time offer. You need to find a certain number of other buyers within, say, 24 hours to get that lowest price.
So for the toilet paper, the price starts at 6.8 yuan if you initiate.
Often, yes. Or sometimes it might even get slightly cheaper if you manage to get even more people than the minimum required to join your specific group. And here's the real kicker.
Yeah.
That absolute rock bottom price, the best possible deal, is often only available to the person who started the group.
Okay, so that's the big incentive to be the group starter. You get the ultimate discount if you do the work of recruiting others. Exactly.
But how do you recruit them? You can't just yell across the internet, hey, who wants cheap toilet paper?
Well, this is where the social EC becomes absolutely critical. When you start a group, that Kaituan Pinduoduo makes it incredibly easy to share it.
Where? On social media.
Primarily WeChat, which is just ubiquitous in China. A couple of taps, and you generate a link to your specific group deal. You can blast that out to your WeChat friends, put it in group chats.
So it's like sending a message, hey everyone, found this amazing deal, jump in.
Pretty much.
No.
And even better, Pinduoduo also generates a unique QR code just for your group.
Oh, clever.
So the person starting it can share that QR code anywhere. Maybe they add a little personal comment, a voice note saying this deal is amazing, or even a quick video showing the product.
And friends just scan the code to join?
Yep. Scan it with their phone. Boom, they're in your group. Super seamless.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like a digital version of like those old Tupperware parties, but massively scaled through social media.
Kind of, yeah. But our source mentions that other attempts at co-buying elsewhere didn't really work like this. So what was different about China? What made Pinduoduo's version take off?
That's a really key insight from the newsletter. The founder, Wang Zheng, seems to have had this really deep understanding of China's specific social fabric, the cultural norms already in place.
Okay, like what?
Well, there's this very strong, long-standing tradition of what you might call referral buying. Think about it even today. You find these small, independent shops, maybe selling amazing local tea or authentic Jinhua ham or a beautiful porcelain from Jingdezhen or special regional snacks.
Right, maybe not in the main shopping area.
Exactly, sometimes in really obscure places. But they thrive. Why? Because their customers love the product and tell their friends. Word of mouth, built on trust. Personal recommendations are incredibly powerful.
That makes total sense. You trust your friend who says, this tea shop is the real deal, way more than some random ad.
Precisely. It's organic marketing based on trust. And this tradition found an online equivalent even before Pinduoduo with something called Waisheng. Micro-businesses, basically.
Waisheng, on WeChat.
Mostly on WeChat, yeah. It's where individuals connect directly with producers. Think farmers selling amazing produce directly, or people selling specific cosmetics, or even branded goods, where you really want to trust the source.
So instead of searching a huge platform, you ask your network, anyone know a good source for organic eggs?
Exactly that. You trust the recommendation from someone you know. And it's great for the producers, too. That farmer with the great vegetables, instead of selling at whatever low price the wholesale market offers.
They can build their own customer base through Waisheng.
Right. They can set a fair price, focus on quality, build loyalty. Pinduoduo essentially tapped into this pre-existing culture, this ingrained habit of referral-based buying, and just supercharged it with their platform.
Okay, so starting a Pinduoduo group and sharing it is like a digital version of that trusted personal recommendation. The starter becomes a kind of mini influencer.
That's a great way to put it. The newsletter actually calls them key opinion leaders, KOLs, but within their own social circles. Their recommendation carries weight.
And the platform incentivizes this heavily.
Massively. With those escalating discounts for the group starter, sometimes making the product almost free if the group is successful, it's a huge motivation to actively promote the deal.
So the users themselves are doing the advertising and marketing. That's brilliant, actually.
It really is. Think about it from the seller's perspective. If your product catches on through these user referrals on Pinduoduo, you can suddenly get massive sales volume just by making a good product and listing it.
Without spending a fortune on ads.
Exactly. Minimal marketing costs. This has been huge for smaller businesses, especially outside the big cities. It lets them compete on price against much bigger companies because their overhead is so much lower.
Okay, so let's circle back to that C2B definition Pinduoduo uses. The value the consumers are providing is...
The advertising and marketing legwork. They bring the customers. Pinduoduo provides the platform, the channel. It completely flips the script on traditional e-commerce marketing.
So when Huang Zheng was asked how prices are so low, his simple answer was...
No advertising and marketing costs.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. And he also had that other really memorable analogy for the business model.
Ah, right. Costco plus Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Costco makes immediate sense. Deep discounts, value, bulk buying through groups, checks out.
Sorry.
But Disneyland, that seems less obvious.
Yeah, that part needs a bit more unpacking. It ties directly back to Huang Zhang's background, which is pretty interesting.
Oh. What did he do before Pinduoduo?
Well, he's got the impressive academic credentials, Zhejiang University, then a master's from Wisconsin-Madison, worked at Google early on, both in the U.S. and helping set up Google China.
Okay, solid tech background.
Then he left Google in 2007, founded an e-commerce site called Uku, sold it, then started that other co-buying platform, Pinduoduo, which eventually merged into Pinduoduo. Yeah, this is the Disneyland connection. He also founded a mobile game development company, Shanghai Shumeng Information Technology.
A game developer? Seriously?
Yep. And they made some popular mobile games. One of them was called Goddess Sword, apparently a MOBA game.
A MOBA, like League of Legends or Dota, those team-based battle games?
Exactly like those. And Huang Zheng explicitly drew a parallel. In a MOBA game, success depends entirely on building a strong team, recruiting the right players, coordinating effectively.
Right, teamwork is everything.
And he saw Pinduoduo's group buying the same way. Success depends on gathering your team, your trusted friends and contacts to achieve the goal, which is getting the discount.
Okay. The team building aspect. That makes sense.
And it goes beyond just forming groups. The Disneyland part is also about the constant stream of engagement. Pinduoduo is always running events, promotions, limited time deals. Much like mobile games use events to keep players logging in every day.
So it's not just shopping, it's an experience. It's engaging, maybe even a bit addictive, like a game.
Precisely. There's always something happening. Remember that subsidy war during Singles' Day they mentioned?
With the iPhones.
Yeah. Pinduoduo just decided to throw massive subsidies at brand new iPhone 11s, selling them for like 500 to 1,000 yuan below Apple's price.
Wow. How many did they sell?
The newsletter says 400,000 units. Just like that. It creates buzz, excitement. It feels like an event, not just a transaction.
Okay, I get it now. Costco for the value, Disneyland for the constant engagement, the fun, the game of finding deals and grouping up.
That's the idea. Value plus entertainment.
Makes sense. Now, let's talk quality again, because our source definitely highlights that initial perception problem, especially in big cities. Pinduoduo meant, oh, crap, basically.
Yeah, the perception was very real. The newsletter even has these funny, almost legendary examples of early China quality nightmares from the platform.
Like what?
Things like toilet paper, so flimsy it just disintegrated, paper towels that somehow left black marks on your face, T-shirts that practically dissolved if you sweat too much, pens that wouldn't write, erasers that tore the paper.
Oh my God. Okay, so the reputation was partly earned then.
It seems so. But, ironically, that notoriety almost helped put them on the map. Everyone knew they were dirt cheap, even if they also knew the quality lottery was risky.
So how did it improve? Did they crack down? Or was it something else?
Well, partly it's that self-correcting mechanism we talked about earlier, the social aspect.
Right, the referral system.
If you keep recommending terrible products to your friends just to get a discount, Eventually, your friends stop trusting your recommendations, right?
Mm.
Your influence drops.
Ah, so sellers peddling junk gradually lose their effectiveness within the Pinduoduo ecosystem.
Exactly. Your social reputation is on the line. Now, look, the newsletter acknowledges that low-quality stuff and probably some counterfeits likely still exist, but the consensus is it's significantly better than it was in the Wild West early days.
That's a really interesting dynamic. The social pressure actually improves quality control in a way. Okay, let's zoom out again. The broader e-commerce picture in China when Pinduoduo was taking off. Our source said traditional players were hitting some walls.
Yeah, that seems right. The big, wealthy coastal cities were getting pretty saturated. Growth was slowing down there. The next frontier was the so-called Aki, Xiachen Shichiqing, literally the sinking market.
Meaning the lower tier cities,
Yeah.
smaller towns, rural areas.
Exactly. Huge population there, massive potential. But reaching them effectively was tough. Different consumer habits, lower average spending power, plus the logistics were way more challenging and expensive than in the big metros.
And the big guys were struggling to crack it.
They were trying. Alibaba and others were also experimenting with new retail, trying to blend online and offline shopping. Think fancy supermarkets like Hema Fresh, which was one of the more successful examples. But overall, it was complex and expensive.
So the established players were looking for new growth engines.
Definitely. And Pinduoduo's strategy was genius in retrospect. They started in those lower-tier sinking markets. They understood the referral culture, what was maybe even stronger there. They leaned into gamification. They partnered directly with local factories who could produce stuff incredibly cheaply.
So they tailored their whole model to that specific market from day one.
Seems like it. And it worked spectacularly. Then, once they had that massive user base, they started attracting those hidden users in the big cities too, the ones initially skeptical but drawn in by the deals and the social buzz. That fueled the IPO.
And Huang Zheng thought city dwellers would eventually come around too.
Yeah, he apparently believed that people in cities who maybe had more leisure time would actually embrace the fun, game-like aspect of Pinduoduo even more.
It sounds like they found a massive blue ocean, a whole segment the others weren't serving well, and built the perfect ship to sail it.
That's a good way to put it. And their success really shook things up. It was like an aha moment for everyone else struggling for growth.
Showing that social e-commerce could be a powerful new model.
Exactly. The newsletter notes that Alibaba, Tencent, JD, they all quickly launched their own copycat social EC apps or features. Though apparently none have quite replicated Pinduoduo's level of user stickiness and engagement yet.
Interesting. So what's the big challenge for Pinduoduo now, according to the source?
The classic challenge for any high-growth tech company: profitability. Investors put up with losses during the hypergrowth phase, but eventually they want to see black ink on the bottom line. Making that transition from purely chasing growth to sustainable profit is the big hurdle.
Right. That makes sense. The newsletter suggested 2020, when it was written, would be a really critical year for them.
Yeah, a potential turning point for Pinduoduo and maybe for Chinese e-commerce overall.
All right, what a journey. Let's try and wrap this deep dive up. We've seen Pinduoduo isn't just another shopping site. It's this really innovative social co-buying machine, deeply plugged into Chinese culture, using gamification super effectively. It's shaken up the whole market, hasn't it? Empowering smaller sellers, turning users into marketers.
And creating that unique Costco plus Disneyland feel.
Exactly. Hopefully, you listening now have a much clearer picture of this really significant force in global e-commerce. It's way more than just cheap toilet paper.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Think about those core Pinduoduo elements: community buying, gamification, using social networks. How might those ideas apply? Or maybe how are they already popping up in e-commerce where you live? Or even in totally different industries?
Yeah. What does this incredible story tell us about where consumer power network consumers might be heading next? Something to chew on.